Very good evening and welcome, friends. That you're watching News Sunday shows how seriously you take what's happening in and around you and in the country. So let's have a great conversation tonight. Friends, last fortnight has seen at least a dozen op-ed pieces across well-known Western media platforms, from the New York Times to the Guardian, from the Financial Times to the Economist, taking a clear position that somehow India's democracy is in danger, it stands compromised or is being throttled. That even if the ongoing elections are free, they might not be fair. And all this has something to do with Narendra Modi as Prime Minister of India. It does not matter to them that for 75 years, India has seen 24 peaceful transitions of power. It does not matter to them that Election Commission manages logistics of such gigantic proportions that would bring down the administrative capacities of most Western democracies. Makes no difference to them that multi-layered democracy goes down to the village level in India. And even today, when paranoia of Narendra Modi's power is psyching them out, BJP rules only a dozen-odd states directly in the country. That the same EVMs that are being targeted in the Supreme Court of India deliver two crucial cash-rich states, Telangana and Karnataka, to the principal opposition party, the Congress, just 6 months back. Prime Minister has indicated towards the possibility of a well-coordinated move between some foreign elements and those within, targeting his government and indeed himself. What's the truth? That's what we are going to discuss in this debate tonight. Is there a well-coordinated move between Lutyens' lobby and Western press to hit Modi? Let me get you the headlines first.
देश दुनिया के बड़े बड़े ताकतवर लोग मोदी को हटाने के लिए एकजुट हो गए हैं।
Prime Minister Modi makes a big claiming Chikballapur says big and powerful people in India and abroad have joined hands to oust him from power.
एकांतवाद यानी एक विषय के अनेक पहलुओं को समझना, दूसरों के दृष्टिकोण को भी देखने और स्वीकारने की उदारता वाला, आस्था की ऐसी मुक्त व्याख्या, यही तो भारत की विशेषता है।
PM marks Mahavir Jayanti with an address from Bharat Mandapam amidst the Jain community, says his spirituality is Bharat's soul. Massive blow for Rahul days ahead of voting in Wayanad. Congress District Committee General Secretary jumps ship, joins BJP. Apsta ante against Tihar jail admin, says letter by DG seeking specialist doctor for Kejriwal is a farce. And uproar at Indie Block rally in Ranchi, Jharkhand. Two groups come to blows in the presence of leaders. Welcome back, friends. The Bloomberg says South is in dread at the prospect of Modi 3.0. Then there's grudging acknowledgement that has nothing to do with democracy per se in the Financial Times, which asks rhetorically, is BJP the world's most ruthlessly efficient political party? As if there should be a premium on inefficiency for the sake of democracy. If coincidence becomes a repeated event, it's likely it's a conspiracy or at least a plan, friends. We had the United States and German foreign establishments speaking on Kejriwal arrest twice in 72 hours each. Both had to be reprimanded by the South Bloc here in New Delhi. Let's look at what's happening to understand the phenomenon of attack on India's electoral democracy, and then I come back to discuss.
Prime Minister has been relentless in his attacks on the opposition. In his recent address, PM Modi made a startling accusation. Without taking any names, the Prime Minister said some are in cahoots with foreign hands to target him. He suggested a collusion with foreign forces aimed at undermining his government. The statement comes amidst a flurry of international attention on Indian affairs, particularly criticism of its democratic processes. Prime Minister's remarks raised eyebrows as he pointed to a perceived coordinated effort to target him and his administration. Notably, the Prime Minister cited a series of events unfolding both domestically and internationally as evidence of this alleged collaboration.
आजकल देश दुनिया के बड़े बड़े ताकतवर लोग मोदी को हटाने के लिए एकजुट हो गए हैं, लेकिन ये नारी शक्ति का आशीर्वाद है, मातृशक्ति का आशीर्वाद है, आपका सुरक्षा कवच है कि मोदी हर चुनौती से टकराते हुए चलता जा रहा है.
One key aspect of Modi's assertion lies in the increasing editorial scrutiny from Western media outlets that have published critical pieces questioning the state of Indian democracy. These editorials have highlighted issues ranging from freedom of speech to the treatment of minorities, prompting concern within the Indian government about potential foreign influence on public opinion. What seems to buttress Prime Minister's charge is the slew of petitions before the Supreme Court challenging integrity of the EVMs, a cornerstone of India's electoral process. The timing and frequency of these legal challenges have raised suspicions of orchestrated attempts to sow doubt about the legitimacy of future elections. In a surprising turn of events, the US State Department found itself fielding inquiries related to Indian politician Arvind Kejriwal, further fueling speculation about international involvement in Indian political affairs. Across the Atlantic, the UK Parliament also engaged in discussions concerning Indian poverty, shedding light on socio-economic disparities within the country. While poverty alleviation efforts have been a priority for the Indian government, the international spotlight on this issue has intensified, with critics questioning the effectiveness of existing policies. The confluence of these events has prompted speculation about a coordinated effort aimed at destabilizing the Indian government. Let's debate.
All right, now that we have understood what we are discussing, let me introduce the guests on the panel tonight. And joining me, Shyam Prasad Meka, leader of the Congress party. He joins us live from Hyderabad. We have Sumant C. Raman, again, leans towards the Congress or DMK. Make your pick. He's joining us live from Chennai. We have Stephen Golub, international affairs expert, leans towards the left, joining us live from California. Very good evening to you. Inar Tangent, political affairs commentator, leans towards the right. He's joining us live from Beijing. It would be interesting to see which right he joins us from, which right he takes, because he's joining us from Beijing. And then we have Rajat Sethi, political analyst, leans towards the right, and the BJP joining us live from Delhi. I want to begin my debate with some opening comments coming in from Kartikeya Tanna. He's a lawyer, political commentator, leans towards the right in India, joins us live from Miami in the United States, and Abhishek Sudhir. He's political analyst, leans towards the left or against the BJP. He's joining us live from Delhi. Kartikeya, to you first. Keep your opening comments brief. I would prefer a minute or less. Is the Prime Minister being targeted?
Abhishek, thank you for having me. Of course, he's being targeted. He's never been the favorite son of, the Western media. You mentioned something at the beginning of your address that, as if there's a premium on inefficiency, that, how Modi is being criticized for being efficient and BJP is being criticized for being efficient and ruthlessly efficient, if I may add. And as if there's a premium on inefficiency. Now, why would the Western media like inefficiency? Let's make no two bones about it. The mainstream Western media is an extension, agent, whatever you call it, of the establishment in the West. So why would they want an inefficient government at the helm of affairs in India? Because they can control them, they can squeeze them, they can try to extract maximum benefit from them as they can. And because the BJP is efficient, because Modi has effectively blocked access not just to the foreign media, but even the mainstream media in India, they are resenting that. Now, what is the problem here? They see issues in India from their own lens. They make up a conclusion that they want to effectively end their column with or the reportage
Okay.
with, and then they, in the process, try to find either one stray incident
Right.
or worse, they sometimes actually invent facts. I mean, so many of these
Right.
articles have been fact checked, by alert handles on social media. So they just get
Right.
entangled in the web of their own lies, fiction, exaggerations, misrepresentations, or even deliberately taking one stray incident to
Right.
portray as if that's the image of India. Unfortunately for them,
Okay.
the people who matter
Okay.
in bringing Modi to power, which is the Indian voter, they don't care two hoots about them.
Okay, Kartikeya. You're saying that the Prime Minister is being targeted, and he's being targeted because he's efficient, the BJP is efficient, and they don't want efficient government or an efficient leader in New Delhi. Abhishek Sudhir,
They want to
with
puppet,
whatever is
yes.
going on, and we encapsulated that in the package, Abhishek, you think this is clearly maligning India's democracy or not?
Well, there's a difference between Prime Minister Modi and India, right? Modi is not India, India is not Modi. India is so much more than Modi. When you jail opposition leaders weeks before a general election, when you jail the chief minister of the national capital, the world's media is going to take note. And if the world's media is going to criticize you and you truly want to be a Vishwa Guru, then you must learn to take criticism. You must have a thick skin. If you're going to jail chief minister after chief minister, the world is going to take notice. Look at what Akhilesh Mishra, ambassador to Ireland, did. The Irish Times wrote a critique of Prime Minister Modi, and Mr. Mishra, in a diplomatic rejoinder, a statement, takes the name of the Congress party, refers to the Congress party, in a clear violation of the Central Civil Service Conduct Rules of 1964, which state that ambassadors and civil servants and foreign officers must remain politically neutral. He says that Prime Minister Modi has been the answer to India's problems which were caused by the Congress party. When you have diplomats who become BJP spokespersons,
Okay.
the foreign media is going to take note. If you want to lead the world, then you must have standards that the world adheres to. Right to free speech and expression, the right to a free and fair trial.
Okay.
Innocent
Okay,
until
15
proven
seconds,
guilty.
John.
Look what is happening with Donald Trump. Yes, multiple cases have been filed against Donald Trump. But
Okay.
Donald Trump has not spent a night in jail. Manish Sisodia has been in jail for more than a year. Arvind Kejriwal is going to be in jail for a year probably
15
until
seconds.
the Delhi election.
15 seconds, Abhishek.
You cannot expect the world to stay silent while you trample democratic rights of democratically elected leaders.
Abhishek, can I come in 15 seconds?
Okay,
So
fair
if
enough.
you want to be the
Abhishek,
Vishnu
you
Guru,
got
you
the
want to
opening
lead the
comments.
world,
Kartikeya, you
then be
also got.
open to criticism.
I'll come to you for a rejoinder. Kartikeya, keep a note of what you want to say in response to what Abhishek Sudhir has said. But I'm opening the debate. Rajat Sethi, Abhishek Sudhir says that there is a difference between India and Modi. Modi is not India, India is not Modi, and hence the Western press's right to criticize should be upheld. Rajat.
I'm all for criticism, Abhishek ji. The problem is that most of these editorials that are being written are not just ill-informed. They are characteristic of how the left lobby globally operates. That is the real problem. If I were to Shashi Shekhar, he has compiled a beautiful headlines. Some of the top, most respected global dailies have written. If you were to read out the headlines for your audience, amused more than anything. UK's Guardian says that messianic spell, how Narendra Modi has created a cult personality. Jacobin says Narendra Modi is preparing new attacks on democratic rights. An Australian says democracy are a threat in Narendra Modi's India. How free and fair will this year's election be? India can grow fast or with or without.
Right, Rajat.
Modi is making India's election all about himself. Progressive South is rejecting Modi. This is Bloomberg. Just look at these bizarre headlines. Yesterday I was on discussion at France 24. It was a session which apparently was discussing India's election. They were so clear. They started saying that he wants 400 seats in the Indian Parliament so that he can change the constitution. This is classic line of the opposition. Can you please explain to me how does a France 24 journalist and an anchor know that Prime Minister Modi is trying to change the constitution by bringing 400 seats? Does he even know what the structure of the constitution is? Does he even know what the highest court of the land has repeatedly talked about the basic structure? These bunch of people, they want to impose their Western set of ideas. And I'm of a firm belief, Abhishek,
Right.
that international relations are a perfect zero-sum game. India's rise is nobody's interest, including the West. Western thinking crippled by
Right.
the zero-sum
Right.
game. And this is where they come from. This is all the criticism emanates from this. Modi gets selected, India will be further strengthened. That's the root cause of their colored then
Okay.
look at India.
Okay. Rajat. All right, Rajat, I would request you to, fix your audio. There is some glitch there because of which there is a bit of an incoherence. I hope you would be able to fix that. But let me take this to Mr. Golub now that you mentioned that it's India's rise which has made it a zero-sum game. Mr. Golub, you would have heard of what we are discussing. And as Rajat mentioned, those Western media platform headlines, some of which I can repeat for you just in case you missed what Rajat said. Deutsche Welle says, will the outcome of India's election increase intolerance? Then you have UK's Guardian saying India's election fixing a win by outlawing dissent damages democracy. And there are platforms like Bloomberg, for example, taking very provocative lines that the southern part of India is very uncomfortable with northern part of India, as if there is some kind of a political and territorial cleavage, obviously, which it is not. You think, Mr. Golub, that this is being done because, as Rajat says, India's rise has made it a zero-sum game. Some are not liking the manner in which India has started asserting itself, and that's why this very coordinated and planned attack or attempt at painting India's democracy in a negative light. Mr. Golub.
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. 2 points. First of all, it's in the interest of the West, of the US, of Britain, of Europe, to work constructively with India because they see China as a real economic, strategic, even military threat. So there's no underlying basis for assuming that Western countries are going after India, are attacking India. But there's a second important point here, which is that if the Western press, if Western governments are engaged in some kind of conspiracy against India, then so is the World Bank through its global governance indicators, through which India has fallen massively, UN human rights investigators, Freedom House, a Global South organization called Civicus, Reporters Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, and a number of Asian and Global South governance-oriented, democracy-oriented, and human rights-oriented organizations. So if the Western press is somehow engaged in a conspiracy, then so are all of these non-governmental, governmental, and intergovernmental groups. I think the simpler answer is really things that are going on in India, which are generating legitimate criticism from abroad and, of course, from within India itself, rather than blaming it on Western governments or the Western press. I'm sorry to say.
Okay, Rajat, would you want to take a quick rebuttal to that? He's saying that if the Western press is biased, are you going to say that about World Bank? Are you going to say that about the United Nations, some intergovernmental organizations of the United Nations? Are you going to say that about the Human Rights Watch, etc.?
I can certainly talk about certain think tanks.
According to him, development parameters, India is going down in global development indicators. Is that, I mean, does that
Abhishek, it is laughable to say the least.
Sound with some merits to you?
I will tell you, in the Press Freedom Index, India's press is ranked below Taliban. What do you expect from such kind of rankings? Are we naive here to be tutored by, the West on such bizarre metrics? On World Hunger Index, we were talking about developmental indices. Let's talk about that. We are pitted below Sri Lanka. India aided Sri Lanka with $4 billion worth of funding when they crippled, their economy was crippled, and gave them enough food to sustain their economy. And we are ranked below Sri Lanka. We are ranked below Bangladesh. So all of these scripted indices that are compared by Sweden and other countries. Let me point out last index. Sweden Institute. Let me tell you, Sweden is a country where we has 10,000 migrants coming in from a different country. The whole country is upside down. We have conservative parties getting elected in every single European country because they can't handle the pressure of even mere 10,000 illegal migrants coming into their country. India has absorbed crores and crores, like millions and millions of illegal migrants coming in from all directions. And we have never the panic button the way
वो कह रहा है
democracy.
वो है वहाँ पे ज्वाइन करो.
We can't be tutored anymore by the Western ideas. They are fixed. They are not ideal in terms of measuring, doing the research well. The data that is that they are gathering is, and therefore most of it would be thrown in the spin of history.
Okay, fair enough. Now let me go to Sumant Raman. Sumant Raman, the Bloomberg says that the South is dreading at Modi 3.0. How fair is that assessment given the fact that you are in Chennai and the only source the Bloomberg report has quoted is there in Chennai?
Okay, Abhishek, I think the results of the election itself will speak for themselves in terms of how, responsive the southern part of the country is going to be towards the BJP. In fact, the first phase got concluded, and widely there is speculation that a lot of seats in the south, especially in Tamil Nadu, the results are not likely to be very encouraging for the party ruling at the center. Now, my point is, when such articles are written, now this is not one particular magazine or one particular source that is coming up with time and time again writing the same kind of article. These are magazines, publications, think tanks in different parts of the world, in different countries. Some are in the Americas, some are in continental Europe. Now, to say that everything is a conspiracy against the country, I think that is ridiculous. I think we need to take a hard look at ourselves and see if there is something which is going wrong and something which needs to be changed. The whole idea of, I remember the good old days of Mrs. Gandhi, everything would be called a foreign hand. Anybody or anything that was critical of her would be attributed to, quote unquote, a foreign hand. And now we've seen that here. Anything which comes out in the media which is critical of the ruling party, George Soros has funded that group. We are seeing the same patterns which we saw earlier, and the same set of mistakes are being made. We need to take a hard look at ourselves, look in the mirror. Is there something that needs to be corrected, and take the necessary corrective actions? And without doing that, to go on this kind of a path, saying somebody chronicles all these articles, are they speaking? Is there a kernel of truth in what they have said? That is what you need to look at.
That's what I'm asking you. Is there a kernel of truth? You are there in Chennai. Is there a kernel of truth in this headline that South is dreading Modi 3.0? You tell me. You are there. The only source of Bloomberg was in Chennai, PTR. Only one person quoted.
South is far from enthusiastic, and you will see that reflected in the results. You will see that reflected in the results, not just in Tamil Nadu or Kerala. You will see that reflected in Karnataka also, which is most unexpected, even 2 months ago, that Karnataka would actually be a toss-up. It wasn't a toss-up till maybe even 3 weeks ago. And today, Karnataka, the general, talk is that it could go even 50-50. So I think that we have to understand that there is something happening on the ground. We can shut our eyes, or we can be ostrich-like with our heads buried in the sand. But I think that that's not going to change things. And these publications, with their raising concerns for the strength of democracy and independent institutions, I think that's an extremely valid concern, which they are not the only ones raising it. Thousands and thousands and lakhs of people in India have the same concerns. So what is the point in pointing a finger at the Guardian or the Washington Post when people in India are themselves raising the same concerns?
Yes.
Okay, I think Shyam Prasad Meka would be happy to hear those arguments. But Shyam Prasad Meka, the point is that the same EVMs which are getting targeted now have delivered Telangana and Karnataka, both the states, to your party, to the Congress just 5 months back. How come EVMs have suddenly become so evil that you have to approach the Supreme Court, or a certain lobby has to approach the Supreme Court nth time, not the first time? Obviously, the attempt is to question the legitimacy of the mandate in case it's not to your liking.
Abhishek, let me first deflate the narrative that you are, not you personally, that the narrative that is being set on this country. First, you started this about Prime Minister, once again being a crybaby, talking about, hey, all the world is trying to conspire against me. Oh, he's a crybaby, let him do that. Okay. Now, second thing, you are talking about EVMs. The same BJP, when they won the 2008 elections and lost the 2009 elections, they were crying about EVMs. So no, right? Similar thing. Now, you are talking about some people talking about EVMs are raising concerns in the Supreme Court. You are calling it a certain lobby. I am marking your words very carefully. It's not a certain lobby. It's before the court and people are raising concerns. Let the court decide it. Okay? Let's leave it at that. And you and I are not sitting here to pronounce a judgment before the court does. Now the Prime Minister, what is he worried about? We are in the midst of an election. Here is a guy who is having the rule of for 10 years of the world's largest democracy, being a crybaby and talking about, oh, some New York Times wrote against me, this wrote against me. अरे बाबा, आप डेमोक्रेसी में हैं, आपके अगेंस्ट लोग लिखते हैं, कंट्री में और बाहर में भी. अगर वो भी आप नहीं सह पाते, तो कैसे डेमोक्रेटिक होते हैं भाई आप? ये पूरा बकवास बंद करो, इलेक्शन लड़ो, मुद्दे पे लड़ो. मुद्दा क्या है ये इलेक्शन में? ये इलेक्शन में मुद्दा है बेरोजगारी, ये इलेक्शन में मुद्दा है महंगाई, ये इलेक्शन में मुद्दा है अग्निवीर, ये इलेक्शन में मुद्दा है चाइना हमारा लैंड हड़प लिया, ये इलेक्शन में मुद्दा है youth of this country are not getting jobs. And election में मुद्दा है the discrepancies in the incomes of the country. This is what we need to talk about. What is this crybaby talking about?
Okay, Shyam Prasad Meka, you still did not answer my question.
Paper. Yeah.
No, Shyam Prasad Meka, you did not answer my question. But before I go to Ina Tenjin in Beijing, Rajat, would you want to respond to what Shyam Prasad Meka is saying? He's saying essentially that's not the issue. While the Congress party ecosystem continues to target the EVMs, and there is a concerted Western media attempt at tarnishing the image of India's electoral process, he says the focus should be on issues like joblessness, etc., not on these. Rajat.
Well, first of all, I don't think the voters of India care about what New York Times or their board is writing. Nobody's questioning that. We as commentators are reading those articles, half-informed articles, and are laughing. We are just enjoying a plethora of filth they have gathered from whatever sources they have in India, and are peddling that agenda. So it's music. Let them do this, because they have been doing this in 2014. Fear mongering is the global project. They did it in 2019. Now what they're saying is that Prime Minister Modi has put a target of 400 seats. The hidden motive is that he is the constitution. How bizarre can it be? They are saying that India is an illiberal democracy and it will become a complete autocracy. Isn't this fear mongering? Do we go out, do our national daily speak about if Trump comes or if Biden comes, the whole world is going to get into a third world war, and we start criticizing Biden and Trump for it? No, we don't do that. We mind our business, and wherever there is fair criticism, we offer fair criticism, but that fair criticism has to be informed. If it is not informed, it looks like a peddled agenda piece sponsored by certain set of people who have big money. It's as simple as that. I might be wrong in my connecting these dots, but
Rajat.
these dots are there for the public.
And this
the
is
public, and
laughable.
as a free person, I am happy to connect the dots the
Rajat.
way it suits me. And this is what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Abhishek,
Rajat, since you mentioned that
we are
an
not,
attempt is
we
being
are
made to show
not-
us as an illiberal democracy. I'll come to you, Shyam Prasad Mega. Let me go to Beijing. Let me go to Beijing and get the Beijing view from Einar Tenjin. Sorry to have you have you waited for that long, Mr. Tenjin. But what's the view like from Beijing? You know, is it possible that the West is irked by India because we are showing the kind of independence at $4 trillion US dollars economy that perhaps the Chinese started showing when they had become a US dollar $15 trillion economy. So maybe the West thinks that we are starting a little too soon. And that's why they are trying to put India in its place, according to them.
Well, I'm not certain, but last time I checked, India is a sovereign nation. I think it was quite clearly in Beijing, they believe that sovereign nations have their own paths, they have their own policies. The fact that they're discussing these issues in the middle of an election is tantamount to election interference. Whether it's successful or not is not the issue. The issue is that these are the very nations who are claiming that others are trying to sabotage their electoral processes while they are doing it with impunity themselves. It's called hypocrisy. So, the ultimate judge of who should govern India is not going to be made in Washington nor London. It's going to be made by the people of India, and foreign powers should stay out of that. That is not their business. It was their business when they were the colonial masters, and they moved India, what is India today, and now they talk about poverty. So I think from China's point of view, they would say, these people need to keep taking care of their own issues, which seem to be quite in disarray.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Golub, you think this is the right understanding actually? There is an attempt at sabotage. There is an element of hypocrisy, almost like a white man's burden, patronizing and very motivated and even hate-filled. West, it's becoming a West versus East issue. The West does not like that India has shown certain independence in its foreign policy under Prime Minister Modi. Right. The West perhaps wanted India to be a little more open in support, more openly on their side on the Ukraine-Russia war. They would have wanted that we don't do business with Russia as in the manner in which we did, despite the sanctions. Right, Mr. Golub?
No. With all due respect to what you're saying, to what your previous guest just said, nations and individuals and organizations and the press do have a right, and in some cases, even an obligation to criticize each other. What China is doing to its minorities and to its citizens, and some of its impacts across the globe, are atrocious in terms of human rights and economic and environmental impacts. That merits criticism from other countries, be they in the West, or be they in Asia, or be they in Africa or Latin America, or wherever. In terms of, and I just want to emphasize, when we're talking about this criticism, it's not just coming from the Western press, it's coming from the UN, the World Bank, Reporters Without Borders, Civicus, a whole range of, the Economist Intelligence Unit, all sorts of organizations from across the world, including from within your own country. And I'll add that I hope that when Donald Trump was in power in the presidency here, the United States received some criticism from such organizations, downgrades in rankings in terms of governance, democracy, civil liberties, and the like, justifiably so, criticism from the press. And if Donald Trump gets back into power, then I hope that the United States will receive such criticism. It will merit that. It's merited it throughout history, even aside from Trump, in some of the things it's said and done across the world, and in terms of some of the colonial-like or imperialist or anti-democratic forces it's functioned or activities it's carried out. but I welcome that as an American. And one more thing back to Trump is that when Trump gets into power, after having tried to overthrow our government a few years ago, and after consistently promoting a white Christian nationalism that discriminates and empowers people for violent actions and for attacks on people who aren't white Christians, including Indians, and who recently said, among other things, that he only welcomes white European immigrants into this country, then I hope India will criticize him. I hope India will take him to task, not simply because I'm opposed to him, because India will have a right to do so, and it will be in the interest of the world community and my own country for India to do so.
Abhishek.
Okay, Kartikeya, since you are there in United States as well, what Mr. Golub says, he's saying that it's par for the course. Just as the West is criticizing India now, India has a right to criticize the West. That's like a liberal position. If Trump does something, he does attract global attention and criticism. So it's okay if the West is doing that in the case of Indian elections this time.
So, Abhishek, of course, the Western press is free to comment and write anything that they want, and in the same breath, the Modi government and Mr. Jaishankar and us on the panel in India is free to criticize that as well. But if you notice this carefully, Mr. Golub's just previous view betrays the fact that because Trump was in power at that time, everything was wrong with America. Then Biden came to power, everything suddenly became right. And now if Trump comes back to power, he's going to be criticized. You see the fallacy here. It essentially depends on who the leader is. And let me tell you this. In the last 2 months or 3 months or so, Indian students have been targeted viciously in American universities across. Should we start blaming Biden for it? But no. So if similar incidents happen in India, because right now Mr. Modi is the prime minister, who's going to be targeted? Oh, it's Mr. Modi. If Rahul Gandhi becomes prime minister and the same thing happens, no, it's just stray incidents. You see, this is the bias that, again, I maintain. The Western media has the full right to publish whatever they want. It's their property, it's their airspace, it's their viewers with zero brain cells. I don't care. But we should criticize that because this is the absolute agenda of these people. But depending on who is in power, who is to blame? Is it the society in itself? Is it the stray incidents, or is it the person in question? So this, if you just reflect on that view, it betrays this very simple fact that it depends on who's in power, who should be criticized.
Right. Abhishek, your response. Abhishek, is basically the prime minister that is not liked, and that's why, because they can't seem to be directly targeting the prime minister.
Of course it does.
They are because they know perhaps if he wins, they have to do business with him. They are obliquely targeting him by questioning the electoral processes.
Right. They're questioning the electoral process. Right. Well, so that's their right to question the electoral process. When we as citizens of India are questioning the electoral process, EVM petitions are being heard by the Supreme Court. The hearings are detailed. They have not been dismissed by the Supreme Court.
But that's internal,
just to go to Mr. Tanna's point,
democratic
he said it depends on
you
the
can
leader. Well, of course it depends on
the government can give its explanation.
Why is Mr. Modi not criticized as heavily as he actually should be? My point is Mr. Modi is not being criticized as much as he should be. Because Mr. Modi, as Prime Minister of India, is seen as a counter to China. India is seen as a counter to China. And that allows Mr. Modi to get away with a lot. Right? And this whole canard about interfering... Excuse me, I didn't interrupt anybody. Can I just speak? Yeah. Look, my point is simply this, that you say you don't interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. Okay, Prime Minister Modi was canvassing the Hindu-American vote for Donald Trump. We all remember Howdy Modi. We remember when Trump came to India. Prime Minister Modi was behaving like Donald Trump's campaign manager. Of course, Joe Biden is not going to like that, but Joe Biden has shown significant restraint because he sees Prime Minister Modi's India as a counter to China. Right, and that allows Mr. Modi to get away with a lot more than his predecessors could have gotten away with. Let's not forget Prime Minister Modi was denied a visa by the United States for the longest time. But today he's celebrated by the United States.
When I'm speaking, you have to stop.
Why is he celebrated?
I'm moderating.
They see him and they see India India as a counter to China. That is what is giving Mr. Modi
can the
this
PCR tell me
immunity,
whether
this
Abhishek is getting me or
diplomatic
not?
shield, if you will. And we are not taking a stance, right? As a citizen, I am confused. Is India with Israel?
Abhishek.
Is India with Iran? Is India with Palestine? You call up Bibi Netanyahu and you say, I stand with you, Netanyahu is an old friend, says Prime Minister Modi. The next day you issue a statement saying we stand with the Palestinians and we want a two-state solution. You say we stand with Russia. You say we stand with Ukraine. Is this non-alignment?
That's the beauty and success of Indian foreign policy. For God's sake, Abhishek, what are you saying?
Basically.
Okay.
There's no clarity.
Okay.
There is no clarity.
I think
You
I
have
have
to
some
take a
understanding
stand.
of foreign policy,
That is what
Abhishek.
foreign policy is about.
That would be classic and classical success when you can speak to the Israelis and Iranians both, when you can get whatever you want from Israelis and also get your crew stuck with Iran back.
So
and that's,
you are
that's
not going
something
to
called
speak out
foreign
and take a
policy
stand. Don't
success,
say
Abhishek.
Israel
That's
is a
not called
friend.
confusion.
Don't say Israel is a friend. If you're going to take the side of the Palestinians, don't tell Netanyahu you're a friend of Israel.
Why not? As a Vishwa Bandhu, as a Vishwa Mitra, we are friends of Israel and we are friends of Iran. What's wrong? We are not like Americans. We're not like Americans because they have to be seen to be with Saudi and Arab autocracies.
But the Americans are criticizing Netanyahu as
Maybe some attempt was made.
President Joe Biden is being harsh with Netanyahu too. That is how liberal democracies work. You criticize your friends. You hold them accountable.
And that's why we have taken a side on the side. That's why we have said that the Palestinians also need justice. We have also said that.
What are we talking? What are we talking? In the midst of an election, and here is a guy who goes and says, "Abki bar Trump sarkar." You are talking about interference in the internal affairs. अरे छोड़ दो बाबा ये इलेक्शन ये इश्यूज पे यहाँ का मुद्दा पे लड़ो
कार्तिकेय quick rebuttal
20 seconds please sir let me
quickly yes
with a fifth standard level comprehension with a fifth standard level comprehension can see that what Modi said was that in 2016, which was in the past, when you said Abki Baar Trump Sarkar, you were adopting a slogan that was used in the Indian context. It was a reference to the past. It wasn't a reference to how they should vote in the future. Anyone with a fifth standard level comprehension should be able to comprehend
you are not
Unfortunately, we have three panelists on this.
You are not
who haven't been able to comprehend it. See the full video properly. See the full video properly.
Listen to what he's saying. I'll come to you.
I will tweet it out. I've already tweeted it out. It is even a fifth standard comprehension level student can comprehend something like this.
You don't question my comprehension. You check your comprehension, okay?
I'm not questioning your confidence. I'm saying a fifth standard student can comprehend that was not an electoral pitch.
What kind of a nonsense is this? He is a preschool comprehension.
Please visit the video again. Please visit the video again and watch it again and again and again. You'll understand the full video.
Okay, now I have a more substantive argument to cover.
I have seen the full video. Now we are
Mr. Meka, let's move on.
Let us focus on this election and these issues that are faced by the country.
Okay, this election. Coming to this election. Mr. Meka, coming to this election.
Mr. Modi will cry on
Rajat and Mr. Golub.
He will cry on Rahul Gandhi, he'll cry on America, he'll cry on West, he'll cry on...
No, we are not discussing Mr. Modi. We are only discussing a pattern we have seen, Mr. Meka. Prime Minister only indicated towards that. And we have been observing it for a while. Rajat and Mr. Golub. Rajat, you know, there was a time when India's topmost leader at that time, the son of Prime Minister, when he had to confirm the news of the Prime Minister having been shot at, had to listen to the BBC for a confirmation. In a way, it was reflective of those times where we were still sort of in so much awe of the Western media and Western press that the Prime Minister's son would prefer a confirmation from BBC than their own media platform. But fortunately for us in India, and unfortunately perhaps for the West, times have changed and we now have much more self-belief, much more confidence, and that's why we don't really care what the BBC says, Financial Times says, New York Times says. We can really even mock them. See the social media response to these platforms. Mr. Golub, is there a sense that maybe times have changed in a manner, particularly in the last 10 years under the BJP and Prime Minister Modi, that the people who are in government in power in India, the Western media does not relate to them, does not connect with them. So there is almost like a liberal arrogance, and that's getting reflected in this kind of coverage. Mr. Golub first and then Rajat.
Well, again, I'll beg to differ. I think the Western media in some ways has praised India's economic performance under Mr. Modi, even though there have been some indications of increasing inequality and problems, severe economic problems for some parts of the population. Overall, the Western media has really had good things to say about the government's economic performance in terms of raising up India's economic role in the world and importance in the world. But look, and again, I'll say this, I said this once, I'll say it again, it's not just the Western media, it's all sorts of media across the world, all sorts of governmental, intergovernmental, non-governmental groups across the world have been very critical of India because of actions and policies that have repressed or jailed opponents, that have clamped down on the press, that have really clamped down on the freedom and ability of non-governmental groups to operate, all under the guise of their somehow being seditionist or anti-Indian or terrorist or whatever. And that's part of a global trend that has been going on in a number of countries, including, I'll admit, my own in terms of Trump. To get back just briefly to one point that a guest of yours, I think accurately and legitimately pointed out, I haven't criticized President Biden. I did say that there have been actions the U.S. has taken under all sorts of leaderships, not just Trump, that merit criticism. I'd extend that to Mr. Biden. But getting back to the bigger point, this is a time when, whether we're talking about the press, non-governmental groups, the UN, the World Bank, whoever, this is a time across the world where democracy is under attack, where democracy is being threatened. And it's perfectly legitimate, as a previous guest pointed out, for liberal democracies, as well as all sorts of other folks and organizations, to criticize where this is going on in the interest of the global community, of their own countries, of India itself. This is legitimate, and it's not just a matter of having a right to do so. Okay. It's a necessity, it's an obligation to do so for all of our sakes.
Okay, Rajat, so basically 2 points come out of Mr. Golub's argument. One, that this is the same press which has been praising India and Prime Minister Modi when it comes to its economic development indices. By the way, Mr. Golub was saying that World Bank and other organizations have been saying India's global development indicators are going down, but now he says the same Western press is actually praising India for its good economic indicators and development under Prime Minister Modi. Some contradiction there. Also, he says that there is an echo chamber of saving democracy chorus, and whatever Western press has written about India is part of that. They extend the same argument to the United States, to Germany, to China, wherever this seems to be happening.
It's to me, right?
Yes, Rajat.
The main problem here is that there is this blue tribe. It's a global blue tribe which thinks rights in a vicious clique. There is this group of people, I don't know how they're connected, but the words that they choose, coinage that they choose, it is all very common, typical of what New York Times at a point in time to start, and be carried forward by Le Monde, be carried then by Guardian, and the others would write, BBC would write, all of that in the form of a perfectly functional clique. This is the problem. None of these people actually go and do their ground research. When you ask most of these journalists who are covering South Asia to come and look how thriving and how noisy our democracy is, go to the streets, go to the rural areas, go to the pockets, and look at how passionate people are. Are your concerns, so-called democratic concerns, even stand basic scrutiny or not? The problem is that these World Bank and the others sitting in multilateral organizations read the same newspapers. They get the same goddamn wrong information about our country. That is where the problem is. Garbage in, garbage out. If you cannot adjust or reform this system of collecting basic data and information, you will keep feeding junk to every important person that is out there, be it global institutions, investor sentiments, everywhere. And this is why we are worried. Why we are worried is, when I speak to some of these global multinational corporations, the boards of those, they ask us the same set of questions. And I have to tell them that most of these, where have you read from? It is the same headlines that they go by. They read that and they form an impression of India. Nobody has the time in today's day and age to actually do the groundwork, which these apparent journalists should have been doing. But they are busy in peddling the agenda. They are busy with our opposition is outsourcing the politics to these journalistic houses to do their dirty work, their dirty laundry. And that is what they end up doing. Therefore, the problem is garbage in, garbage out. If you do not correct this...
that's a valid argument. Sumant Raman, be honest.
Yes.
Sumant Raman, be honest. While we are a vibrant, strong democracy, but the manner in which all this echo chamber has really come together, it does in some ways tarnish or malign or show India's democracy in a negative light, which is not good for the country, not good for you as a citizen of the country, irrespective of your political leanings.
Look, Abhishek, India was a vibrant democracy. Gradually, the vibrancy of its democratic processes, its institutions, has been significantly eroded to the extent that many, external observers and even some within India are referring to it as an electoral autocracy. So I think that we should not kid ourselves. The strength of democracy depends upon the strength of the institutions and the independence of the institutions.
We don't call it compromise of democracy in the United States, the manner in which the Biden administration has gone after Trump.
Look,
many times embarrassing the judiciary as well.
One second. In the United States, if you will recall, the Supreme Court had actually come down quite heavily on Donald Trump at one point of time. So and some of those judges happen to be those directly appointed by the Trump administration. So let's not even go down that path. If the United States has been able to overcome the events of January 6th, it is primarily because of the strength of its institutions, where the vice president refused and stood up for what was right, stood up for the Constitution. That is what makes a country truly democratic.
But that's absolutely internal to the functioning of democracy in the United States. Have we become used to getting those patronizing, motivated commentary from the Western press to get a cue for our democracy, Sumant Raman? If that is the case, then it would be very unfortunate, right?
Why would we need to look anywhere else? We have a glorious tradition of democracy, except for a couple of years between 1976-77, during the period of the emergency. Other than that, India has, yes, maybe it's been a messy democracy, but it's clearly been a vibrant democracy. And India today yearns to go back
to those proud and messy democracy. We are proud to be a messy democracy. Sumant Raman, Kartikeya, unfortunately, I have really run out of time. But you see, all these Western media platforms, the Bloombergs and the Economists and the New York Times, I would make a humble request to them that if they really want to see how strong and rooted India's democracy is, they shouldn't be writing these op-eds sitting in Paris and New York and London and in Delhi, in fact. They should be traveling across the country to villages. If they want to see how strong a democracy we are, they need to cover a panchayat election and then understand the roots of this country's democracy, which perhaps in some ways predate Magna Carta. On that note, thank you so much, Rajat Sethi, Kartikeya Tanna, Mr. Golub, Mr. Tanjan, Sumant C. Raman, Shyam Prasad Meka and Abhishek Sudhir for joining us from all those places. It was a great conversation.